Craig's in the office.
Tell me your name again. I knew the High Desert Star. Say it. Jeanette. Jeanette. How do you spell it?
It's like her name with an accent, so it's Jene and an accent on the last E.
Thanks, Jeanette. All right, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of Joshua Basin Water District for Wednesday, June 6th, 2018. Please rise and join Kathleen in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready, begin. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Termination form.
Madam President, all 5 directors are here. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Item number 4, approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Anyone against? Unanimous. Item number 5, public comment. This is the time set aside for public comment on any district-related matter not appearing on the agenda. Government code prohibits the board from taking action on these items, but they may be referred for future consideration. Please state your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Is there any public comment? Stephen.
Stephen Whitman, ratepayer in Joshua Tree. Most of you have known me for close to 10 years, and I actively censor my words in this room so that I don't appear to be overly hostile to decisions that are made here, even though some I strongly disagree with. I don't want to be a Mike Lewis in this room. But in the 10 years that I've been here, one of the most key precepts of this room has been transparency. And in the last couple of months, you have, excuse my word, really screwed the pooch on that one. You had what I regard as the most significant meeting that's ever occurred in this board of directors at the Helen Gray Center, where the report came in from an outside advisor. What a report that was. And that was withheld from the public for several weeks so that it could be censored. And most important, it was not taped by Bob Stevens and his film crew, so the public could not see a damn thing that was presented there. I'm not even sure the public even knows that report exists. And after 40 years of being a real estate broker, the nice things are in the big type, but the critical things are in the small type. And that report had a lot of small type that revealed a lot that you did not want. Well, let me censor that. That this anomalous group of people in this building called staff did not want revealed. But it was there to be read, and I've got a printed copy of it. Now, if you're going to have public meetings, if you want to be transparent, don't have a meeting without the film here. If the film is not here, then the director should stand up and leave the room so that the quorum is broken. I guess that's all I have to say tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitman. Anyone else? Seeing none, we will move to the consent calendar. Matters on the consent calendar are considered routine in nature and will be enacted in a single motion without discussion. Any board member or member of the public may request an item be removed from the consent calendar and acted on separately. The draft minutes of the May 16th regular meeting of the board and the second quarter ending 12/31/2017 financial report. And it's just to accept them. Is there a motion?
I would move that we accept the consent calendar.
I second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It is unanimous. Item number 7, update on low-income assistance program development. Mr. Sauer.
Okay, so the recommendation is that the board authorize the general manager to initiate a one-year pilot program at a cost of $6,650. And if the board will recall, we've been discussing this, and the CAC has been discussing this, and it's an effort to set up a low-income rate assistance program similar to what's done in several other districts. These programs are funded with non-water revenues, and I'm recommending that if you do this, we could use property tax revenues or fees associated with delinquent accounts, such as late fees and lock-off fees. Property tax revenues are about $425,000 each year. Fees collected associated with delinquent accounts average $75,000 each year. Annual costs for similar programs at Coachella Valley and Mission Springs range from $2,000 to $5,000 a year. The way this program would work, in cooperation and very willing in cooperation with United Way of the Desert, customers could receive an application by coming to the Water District, perhaps get it off of our homepage or through the United Way of the Desert, or they could go to Salvation Army in Yucca Valley on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. to get their applications and in their applications. The program will be fully administered by United Way of the Desert. Customers apply for assistance through United Way, through either going to Salvation Army or sending it in online. Once they have proven their income level and have been qualified by United Way, the agency, United Way, notifies Joshua Basin Water District Customer Service, and their account would be credited the $50. Employees and the public can donate to the program through United Way. We recommend that the board fund this one-year pilot program at $6,650. That will allow up to 120 successful applicants. That's $6,000. United Way's overhead will cost the district $50 a year, plus 10% of each successful application, or $5. So they would garner a $650 overhead fee. Folks who qualify, the Joshua Basin Water District bill must be in the name of the residential customer seeking assistance. The address on the bill must be the customer's primary residence. As I mentioned, you can apply through Salvation Army. United Way will do the calculations. And basically, we originally thought about the qualification being equal to 100% of the federal poverty level, but all of the other water districts that do this use 200% of the federal poverty level. And in discussions with some of the CAC members, they were willing to consider to go that way for the pilot program. So basically, if a person in a household of one has a total combined gross annual household income of up to $24,000, they'd be eligible for $50 credit towards their water bills once per 12-month period. Okay. So right now it's not in the budget, but what is in the budget is an estimated $5,000 for the customer account assistance program, and we probably actually spent or did not bill about $8,000 of revenue in the capital assistance program last year. So as we go into the budget, if you approve that, I'll change that $5,000 to $6,500, and I'll also be bringing an amendment to the cap policy to have it become primary residence only and not commercial ventures such as VRBOs and vacation rentals. So that's our recommendation, and that's the end of the report.
And Kurt, the amount is 6,550, because you said 6,600.
Should be 6,660.
So it should be
6,650.
Okay, so if we make that change, please. Any board comment on that? Rebecca?
Well, I'm really pleased that we're doing this, and it might not sound like $50 is a lot, but I'm sure for somebody, at some point, that's going to be a lifesaver. Some month, there's just going to be some other bill that came up, and that $50 is going to make a difference. And 120 customers, that's pretty good. That's quite a few people, and I think your guidelines are good for it. I'm glad you're at 200% because $24,000 a year is pretty poor for a single person. So, and my gosh, at $32,000 for two people, a family of four, you know, $50,000. That's not two cars and a week's vacation anymore. So this is, I'm pleased with it. So this has been through the Citizen Advisory Council.
Yes.
We have gone through this, and this has been their recommendation then, pretty
Yes.
much. I'm really pleased that we're doing this, and at least starting as a pilot program. I think it's important.
Thank you. Director Johnson?
No, I concur. I think this is a great idea. I'm just curious, out of accounting purposes here, we're going to distinguish which account this money's coming out of?
As far as the revenue that we're
Yes.
using for that, yes, we would designate that from the property tax revenues.
Is it property tax or the delinquent accounts?
Could be either.
It could be either, but it sounds like we're going to be moving in the...
I would urge the staff to not utilize operating revenues such as the delinquent accounts. I would suggest it'd be much more prudent and wiser to just use the property tax, non-operational
So can
revenues.
that be part of the motion then?
Yes, it can be.
Okay.
Okay. Gary?
I think it's a great start. I've heard a figure of 29% in this community for at or below the poverty line. So, and we have a lot of, if you take our ratepayers times that percentage, it's far more than the number of people that we could provide assistance to. And it's also a relatively small amount. It's pretty modest, and I'm guessing there are folks that could use greater assistance than that. So I look at it as a great start. I'm wondering if there was any discussion with the CAC about it being like a first step and what staff is thinking in terms of perhaps future steps to grow the program, make it a little bit bigger.
I think I can speak for the CAC, but if I say something that 3 of the 6 members don't agree with, they can certainly comment. It's viewed as an initial step pilot program. Mission Springs and Coachella Valley don't have 120 participants, which we find amazing. And so we'll see what the first year brings, and if it's something that the board wants to continue and amend, we can certainly do that. Or if the board wants to end it, we can do that.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if people know about it.
They know.
So.
Thank you. Director Flum?
Occasionally, we have mentioned in any number of meetings, including the morning meetings, that it's important that we do something that's more than just lip service or a gesture to not leave people behind in this big decades-long build-up or replacement projects that we're going to be doing. And this is, as the general manager just said, this is it's a test, it's a pilot. We'll see how it goes, and I'm somewhat enthusiastic about this. I would not be inclined to ever stop it or reduce it. If anything,
it should be more. Just to clarify, if I heard in other meetings that there's limitations on where we can draw revenue from, that's why we're discussing whether it's property taxes or certain kinds of locked meter fines and some such things.
Yeah. Gil can further refine this answer, but you may not use water revenues, as I understood it.
Water operational revenues is my concern, and most of the districts that I know and represent, they use passive income, passive non-operational income to circumvent any legal challenges, and I encourage you to do the same.
What we need is a cell tower lease.
Yeah, that's what my clients do use that. That's pretty simple identification of what revenue is appropriate. You don't enjoy that source of revenue, so I think property taxes is the next best thing to passive income. This would exclude standby fees, but I'm sure you have plenty of revenue excluding standby fees. And the motion should incorporate, I hope it does, what I'm suggesting to you.
And finally, the president of our advisory committee, Karen Tracy, she has spoken to this issue at that podium there. She can speak for herself. She's a very articulate woman. But she has said that a $50 assistance to someone in that income level is significant. It is an important thing, and it is a good start, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. And I agree with everything that's been said. I'm glad that we are actually getting a start on this, because I think it's, for a low-income, disadvantaged community like us, it's really important to offer assistance. Public comment, anything from the audience? Yes.
We should look at these minutes real carefully.
Name and
Please
city
share
of
it with me
residence.
before they're approved.
Tom Kane, Joshua Tree. I'd like to thank Kurt, who really did the heavy lifting on this effort, and right from the get-go. So we were all pleased about that. Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
Stephen Whitman, Joshua Tree. I don't like to speak more than once a night in this room, but $50 once a year is so piss poor. Why in the hell are you even considering it? I have 2 households where I pay all the utilities for years. And it's not significant. Why is a water district with the wealth that we have, small though it might be, debating $50 once a year for a family, when that might not be enough for 1 month? This is why I don't show up in this room very often. It is so frustrating to see such small things discussed by such significant minds as sit on this board.
Thank you, Mr. Whitman. Actually, the people that we've talked to consider it that it would be extremely helpful. So thank you for your comments. Do I have a motion?
I would move that we authorize the general manager to initiate a 1-year pilot program at the cost of $6,650 to be, what do we say, deducted from?
Drawn from the property tax
Drawn
revenue?
From non-water revenue would do.
Right, from, okay, property tax revenues, passive, non-income.
Okay,
I second.
we'll take a roll call vote on this. Dr. Flom,
Aye.
Director Hund,
Aye.
Director Johnson,
Aye.
Director Ender,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. It passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thanks, Gail. It's about time, I agree.
It's just a start.
So
All right,
if I
yeah.
may, before we move on, I want to thank the Citizens Advisory Committee. And Karen, it started with your idea about rounding up. And the CAC was totally on board. 3 of the members went with me down to Coachella Valley, learned about the program, and they're very supportive as representatives of the CAC and members of the community. So, thank you.
Thank you, yeah, thank you. All right, we will move on to item number 8, the 18-19 budget. Recommend that the board receive for information and approve all or a portion of the proposed budget. Mr. Sauer.
Well, this is one of my favorite topics, and I'm sure it's one of your favorite topics, too. So tonight, we've discussed this at the Finance Committee one or two times. I can't recall if we've actually brought the whole budget. I think we have to the board, maybe not. But it's time to move forward on a 18-19 budget. And if you'll recall, we used to do two-year budget, and a couple meetings ago, the board approved going to a one-year budget. The budget's broken down in operational, well, it's broken down in revenue, and then operational expenses and capital expenses. So we tried to shape this little presentation to simplify the accounting for the layperson. Is that fair? Susan and Ann have a great chance to practice on me, so that I hope it makes sense. So, and again, this board does not have to approve a budget prior to June 30th, okay? It's not like the feds, maybe the state. But the sooner we get an operating budget approved, the better, and the sooner we get a capital budget approved, the better, so that we can start working. So, in total, including revenues to be generated because of the rate increase, our operating budget has a $1.2 million surplus. Since the supplemental budget is also operating expense, we need to deduct about $250,000 of that surplus if you decide to fund the supplemental. And then that leaves a net operating budget surplus of $952,000. And our capital budget, and we'll go through with everything that we want to do, results in a deficit of $1.3 million. And that's why we'd like to discuss borrowing money. We're not going to discuss in detail the borrowing of money tonight. Susan and I did not have enough time to go over the three various scenarios that she presented, and she's not able to be here tonight. But let's just run through, and I will try and keep the same pages up on the screen as to what we're talking about. On page 20 of 36 of your packet, the total revenues is projected to be $6.6 million. And our total expenses are projected to be our total operating expenses are projected to be $5.5 million, leaving a net revenue of $1,204,000. If you decide to fund the supplemental new costs, expenses, that comes to $251,000, which leaves $952,000 left, which the public won't be able to see, but that's in the right-hand column. And when we bring this back, we'll try and have that in larger font. So the total revenues then, the net revenues would be $952,000, and the rate study included drawing down the reserves by $1 million, and we would draw monies from our other reserve accounts to bring our total revenues available for capital to $2.4 million. And then we'll get into the various capital segments, administration, operations, and the CIP plan. So the revenues are bringing in an additional net revenues of $1 million, $1.2 million from the previous year. All right, so in the operations and supplemental budget, our expenses, well, our revenues are $6.6 million versus 5.7. The expenses, you can go through production, distribution, customer service, administration, engineering, on down the line. The total expenses for this year are $5,487,000 proposed, as compared to $5,600,000 last year. So we've tightened our expenses, and that leaves us with a net revenue of $1.2 million. So we slide that $1.2 million down into, that's what we have available. We'll take care of operations. Now we want to do supplemental, and we want to do capital improvements. So the total expenses for capital and the organizational assessment costs and the standby assessment audit would come out to $251,000, and we'll go into that in more detail in a minute. Leaving net revenues of $952,000, which we then slid down into the capital section, okay? All right, so we'll get into more detail, but basically, we have $952,000 left over from revenues. You take $1 million out of the reserve. You take some, how much did we take out of?
447.
447 out of the existing reserves, such as equipment and technology, building fund, et cetera, which gives us $2.4 million to work with. And then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of capital, because when we get done with everything that we want to do, we end up with a shortage of $1.3 million, primarily because of the purchase of equipment. So rather than go through every one of these pages of line item for production, distribution, customer service, admin, engineering, finance, human resources, bonds and loans, which we've gone over with the finance committee a couple of times, I would ask if you had any questions and could speak to those. What I'd like to do is move on to page 27. Do you have any questions about those pages?
Do you have any questions about the pages in between?
Yeah. Or maybe you can come back to them as, here's what I propose. Let me run through the next couple of pages
Okay.
and try and explain to you what we want to and just so nobody says that I skipped over some stuff. It's in the packet. It's posted online. It's available to Finance Committee, and we're more than willing to go over what's in the line items. But we get to net revenue from our operations, and we're at total revenue from operations at $1.2 million. Okay? So moving forward, we've got 1.2 million sitting there, is that right?
Yes.
So the supplemental costs, the multi-department Xerox color copier, Choilita Road, that's really not a new expense, that's the lease on the mailroom copier. And at the next budget you see, it will be in, it won't be new because it's a yearly lease, $330 a month. The GeoViewer maintenance purchase is $29,000, and there's some concern, evaluation that still needs to go on with whether or not we're going to go with GeoViewer or ArcGIS, but some amount of money for bringing GIS to the field is going to be needed, and whether it's GeoViewer or ArcGIS, a combination of both or some sort of other hybrid, there needs to be something in this budget. It is a new cost. It's associated not only with general operations, but it's associated with getting the capital improvement plan going. It's also associated with improving our ability of SIMS and Encode to speak to this combination ArcGIS, asset management, billing, customer service software that we want to create. The risk management COI, that was approved at the last, that's, apparently we need more money for electricity. So, and then we're proposing the standby fees have not been audited for more than 25 years. And the 5,000 is legal and the 45,000 is for a company to actually do the standby fees parcel assessment process. That comes to $92,000. And then the organizational assessment recommended that a production position be added for succession management in the production department. And it also recommended that a contracting procurement technician be hired. So the total cost for those two positions for 3/4 of a year is $159,000. If you don't want to fund that, or you don't want to fund anything in the supplemental, all you need to do is tell us. But I believe that if we're going to move this district forward to where y'all want the district to be, that we should strongly consider that. So that leaves net revenues of $952,000, right? So then you add, go to the next page, and all right. So the net revenue is $952,000. We are still doing some Chromium 6 work, but the loan is coming in to offset the capital costs. And the $16,000, $18,000 a year that we pay the state back for the next 5 years is in the operating budget already, okay? All right. So then we have the building reserve, the equipment and technology reserve, the studies and reports reserve, and the meter replacement reserve. We take monies out of those existing reserves, plus another $1 million out of the reserve general account, which gives us $2.4 million to work with for capital projects. Now, capital projects are anything over $5,000, okay? So there's administrative capital projects. Those are a codification of records, which is estimated to be $50,000. All of our administrative policies, resolutions, etc., we've tracked, but they've never been codified and orderly, and they're all in Susan's brain, the history of that. Okay, so it's a recommendation that we hire a firm to actually do the codification, a chronological, historical understanding of how we got to where we are and why we do what we do. Okay? Don't have to do that. It's been on our list of things we want to get to ever since I've been here. But we'd like to accomplish it this year, and certainly I think you need to accomplish it within 2 years. So there's a ergonomic redesign of the customer service counter for $20,000. Interior lights, it's replacing all of these lights with LED fixtures. According to the solar feasibility study, that payoff would occur in energy savings in 3.5 years, I believe it was. But again, you don't have to do that. The strategic plan, we put in a budget for $25,000. If you remember, the organizational assessment recommended that we revisit and reinvigorate the strategic plan. We put in $25,000. We have 2 proposals from strategic plan people. They range from $29,000 to $33,000. So when we discuss this budget again, I will adjust that to probably around $30,000. The file server replacement, again, it's the file servers that we have, and Keith can speak to this, in the mail room have reached their end of life. In fact, if we go to, Windows is going to Windows 10 in 2019, our servers will not handle that. So that's the file server. We're going to stay connected with our internet technology. We need to replace the file server. The cabling in the server room and the security of the server itself needs to be redone and properly put in a cage, and that's about $12,000. And the replacement computer for Keith is coming out of the budget, and don't worry, I already told Keith that. All right, so that's the administrative part, okay? And that leaves us with 1.5 million if we do everything. Okay. So,
2.25,
what did I say?
1.5. Leaves us with 2.25,
Okay, what page you on?
28.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, leaves us with 2.25. All right, so then, I know that there's a lot of interest and talk about doing the capital improvement plan. We gotta get out there and replace main line, okay? But we also have some regular recurring operational stuff. The water recharge, we have been recharging 500 acre feet. The rate study allows us to generate enough revenue to start recharging 700 acre feet this year, moving up to 1,000 acre feet in the 5th year. That's $418,000 to recharge. The meter service repair, we've just sent out a request for proposals to 4 different meter companies, and we believe that over a 5-year period at $250,000 each, we would be able to put in AMR meters that have the capability going forward of being transferred over to AMI meters, which means for now you can't access it on your smartphone, but sometime in the future you can. It also means that we don't have to put up some 16 towers throughout the district to capture the data. All right, so there's recharge and there's meter replacement, and I consider meter replacement part of the capital improvement plan, but it's not technically in the existing capital improvement plan. And the vehicle replacement, this year we're only going to replace 1 vehicle, not 2, which leaves us with 1.5 million. So the capital improvement plan includes $40,000 to continue work on our SCADA system. Now, what we need is $287,000 over 5 years. Okay? This year, we're in the process of spending some $80,000 on upgrading the SCADA system. We were going to spend another $83,000 this year. However, when we complete the local hazard mitigation plan, and it gets approved by the state and the feds, we'll be able to put in some grant funding, and if FEMA approves those grants, we will get 75% towards the total project. So rather than spend 83, I decided we'd propose 40, and hopefully by June of next year, we'll have the approval from FEMA and we'll be able to put in these notice of interest. Master Control Center for Well 14, $73,000. And again, that's the schematics are missing from Well 14, and rather than just retrace all the old wires, this is to bring that well up to modern day standards. And then 40,000 is engineering design for the water line, main line replacement that we are proposing to do. The 867,000 is what it will cost us to do it in-house. That includes 5 positions, their salaries and benefits, all the materials, etc. And 75,000 is to have an engineering firm design the next 2 projects so that we're ready to go in 1920, 2021. So that leaves us with 447,000. And if we were just going to stop there, we would have $447,000 to do other capital improvement work. But we don't have the equipment that is needed to do mainline replacement. And in order to do mainline replacement with a crew of 5, we need all of this equipment, which puts us 1.3, it's for $1.7 million, which puts us $1,310,000 in the hole this year. Okay? So, hence the reason for the board to discuss waiting a year or 2 before we do mainline replacement. We'll have enough money at that time to buy the equipment and hire the people, or take out a loan. And those are the loan discussions that we need to have. So I'll pause there and see if there's any questions on our thinking and if that was clear enough for you.
Okay, start at your end, Dr. Flow. Sorry, honey.
Did I see, I think I saw in the either, I think it was in the rate study, and I think you mentioned it once yourself, that we're sort of allowed a debt payment of about somewhere around 325 or 350,000 a year. I think you said 350,000, if I recall.
It's 3, yeah, if I said that, I should have said 325,000, and that's for a $5 million loan.
Yeah, so there is sensible money, smart guys that did this rate study have us in the ballpark for being able to pay this off without an extraordinary strain of some kind, given the schedule of rate increases that we're imposing or implementing is a better word now.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, that 300, let's say it was $325,000. That has to go to the loan, right? So it's going to affect our bottom line for what's available to go into the CIP. But if you take out that loan now, you've got $5 million, $3 million that you can start doing these projects now, rather than waiting for 5-6% consumer price index and other inflationary issues. So it pencils out.
Does anybody recall the name of the man that did that rate study?
Alex.
Yeah, Alex.
Handlers.
Yeah, he was a very impressive person. He was here half a dozen plus times explaining all of this stuff, working with people, handling questions and all that kind of stuff. And he was roughly standing over there somewhere when he said that the way we've structured the rate increases now, we're only funding up to about 60% of what we actually need to get started on this. Fix me if I'm out of line on these things. And so I said initially when we had the 3 scenarios on the schedule for how we were going to borrow money, one of them, the 3rd scenario, I believe it was, actually included the acceptance of the idea of borrowing up to $5 million. And I looked down that way and I says, well, we can borrow money anytime we want, so let's go with number 2. That way we're not imposing some rigid, maybe, let's put it this way, taking away the flexibility of how and when we borrow for projects that aren't necessarily, I'm not sure yet, structured and scheduled as to how we're going to do it. We haven't hired anybody yet, for example. We haven't bought any equipment yet. I don't know what the bidding process is. That could take a lot of time. But anyway, I just don't want people to think that all of a sudden we're discovering that we don't have enough money to do this and we have to borrow. This was known all along. It was in the rate study report too, as I recall reading. Generally speaking, my philosophy is that we have to attack these the overall problem of having a degraded over time water system that is by statute all over the place required to deliver clean, safe water. And the system is, some of it is, the piping is up to 60 or 70 years old, a pretty high percentage of it, I believe. And a lot of the pumps and pressure devices and all this other kinds of stuff is also very old. And the idea of waiting until we save up, or for that matter, overprotecting our reserves. Reserves, I love them, but you save them, as I said early on, probably in last July, I said they're for saving up for stuff. Well, we need the stuff now, so we need to spend money now, I think, but not all of our reserves, and obviously we're not going to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Hunt?
Well, first, overall, I think this is an excellent plan. I think it's, I don't know if the word is aggressive, but I mean that in the most positive way. It's a real, like, assertive, but it's also very well thought out. I've listened to all of you in previous meetings talk about our different options for, and Susan, who's not here tonight, for borrowing money, for purchasing or leasing equipment. Ann and company have done a great job at looking at, all the different ways we can put our finances to work, like our reserve funds and other funds, to make this happen. We have a real need. We've talked about it over and over again. We have a real need to upgrade our infrastructure. That's why we voted in favor of our rate increases, and why we had good support from our ratepayers for doing that, those that participated in the process. So this looks very good to me overall. Also, I know some people are hesitant to borrow money. I am. I try to pay as I go in life as much as possible, but sometimes it's actually smart to borrow money, especially when you can get it at very competitive interest rates. And we've talked about it before. I've talked about it before with construction inflation going up at least 4% a year. If we borrow money at a lower rate than that, and we start now and we do the work now, then our cost is going to be lower to do that work. I think it's a great idea to add staff, to have an in-house crew to do a lot of this work, laying the new pipeline, doing other work. It's cheaper, and I think you're going to go into that a little bit. And it also creates more jobs, good-paying jobs in this community, which is a great thing as well. So I think it's an excellent strategy, an excellent plan. The last thing I wanted to speak to a little bit is this district finally fully going into the realm of GIS, and I requested more information from General Manager Sauer and Assistant General Manager Ban, and they met with me, and Mark did a great job of presenting what GeoViewer can do. And it's, I think it's an excellent platform. I think it's going to make life in the field and life in the office easier and more efficient, and it's just remarkable what a GIS-based program can do to help you know where your infrastructure is, manage it, manage work orders, manage costs. It's really great. What I did ask is that they consider looking at what Esri, the makers of ArcGIS, has to offer for, to provide the same services, so that they could take a, look at it and give it a, competitive consideration, and also feature consideration for what can be done. But I completely agree with Kurt. We need an item in the budget for it, because it's really gonna benefit our district to better utilize GIS. And GeoViewer actually is built on a GIS platform. It's just that somebody very entrepreneurial and very clever has developed a great sort of, build on to the fundamentals of GIS that provides lots of different features that that the district can use to do their work. So I think that's it. I'm looking forward to moving forward with this and getting on with the process of getting our capital improvement done. I don't want to wait. I want to get started.
Thank you. Director Johnson.
Well, not that we haven't seen these numbers before, and I'd encourage each and every one to come and attend our finance meetings so you can get a better appreciation for all of this.
Which is next week, right?
Which is, I don't know the exact date, but I'm sure you're going to let me know.
Wednesday at 9.
Wednesday at 9.
An hour and a half, so they've got a deadline to be done by, which is also good.
I think kudos to Ann and Susan. I think this is a good layout, and I'm appreciative of the fact that we can go line item by line item with this, and as we do in the Finance Committee. I have some reservations in terms of some of the expenditures and the timeline, but I do like the fact that we have the opportunity for a year to go one way or the other if we borrow or we take reserves or whatever we decide. I am reminded that also in the organizational assessment study that efficiency and cost analysis was not addressed. And I'm curious to know, in terms of the efficiency ratings and where we are currently with staff. Because if we start adding another 5 employees, that's over $1 million a year. And that's a huge, huge burden for a district like this to absorb. So I guess I'm looking at this in terms of where are we efficiently, or efficiency-wise with the current staff, or do we still need further implementation on the organizational staff recommendations and moving forward with that? There's some parts of the supplemental that I think probably could be delayed. I'm totally supportive with the GIS improvements. I think we talked about that at length, of trying to get in-house stuff together before we start moving out in the field. So I think that should be a priority. However we decide to go, I certainly think that's a number one priority. There's a lot of numbers, and I'm still digesting some of this stuff as Tom and I get to do. We do have some reserves. We can put that in part, and we also have the opportunity to borrow the other part, or do it in fragmented periods. So I guess I'm saying a lot of things and saying nothing, but essentially there's a lot of numbers here. There's a lot of time, and I too want to see something happen, but I want to make sure we do it in the most efficient way.
Thank you. Director Runger.
Vice President Johnson, you said something about $1 million a year. It's close. It's $867,791.
Right, and then you start adding benefits, and you start adding everything else, you probably exceeded that number.
Well,
That one includes labor benefits.
If I may, the $862,000 includes salary and benefits, but it includes the pipes, the valves, the hydrants, et cetera. The actual cost of the CIP crew for 3/4 of a year is $398,000. So that's with their salaries and benefits.
And I think you guys have talked about this before, how long it would take to get us actually putting shovels in the ground. Seems like we have kind of once we actually can get the funding, we say, let's do this. Hiring people, how long that will take. We were looking sort of by September, October, I think we were talking about that. And that still seems feasible?
Yeah, currently, right now, I think once we know that we're going to move ahead with developing this in-house, we'd want to get started on the design right away. So that's going to be one of the things that holds us up the longest, getting permitting and stuff like that, so.
And the job descriptions have to be written, has to be negotiated with the union, et cetera. So, yeah, September would be nice as far as hiring, October maybe.
But yeah, there's a lot to do before, any earth gets moved, for
Right.
sure.
And it's going to take a while to procure the equipment if that's the route the board chooses to go.
And I know Susan's brain's not here tonight, but
Almost.
President Luckman's brain is here tonight. You were on the board when they finished the H-zone pipe replacement, right? Do you remember how that was done? Was it contract people? We did it all?
Yes.
And
Every-
their equipment?
Every job that we've done, I think, has been contracted out, because we've not had either the equipment nor the crew to do it.
So this would be great for us to be able to do it here in-house, and then, use people for other things, and, my gosh, get us into the 21st century, with the GIS and everything else. And I think that, this was the whole rationale of us raising rates, was that we would be able to start working on the infrastructure, and that's here in the field, what comes out of somebody's tap. And I think it's real important that we, start on that as soon as possible, Where are we? I know I've been at finance meetings, and we have talked about this before in other board meetings. This looks like it's getting pretty close to where you'd want to be with this. Does this?
Pretty close.
Okay, all right. That's why I'm seeing things and hearing things again that have been familiar with. And we have talked about the loans. I know in handout tonight, there was the loans were for the 3 million, but we did talk about 5 million. That was, I think, what we were looking at was a $5 million loan.
Yeah, initially. Can I say one more thing?
Yes, sir.
A lot of this is timing, and one of Mark Band's big jobs here is to calendarize this or schedule this kind of stuff so it's in the proper sequences to get the most bang for our buck. But with this meter replacement thing, I think Kirk concurs on this. The meter replacement part is kind of a buffer in that when we start the timing of hiring people and then putting them to work, there's a lot of variables in that, I would imagine, but replacing meters is relatively simple. So as we hire people, rather than waiting around for a tractor or for other guys to work with or something, people could be used to do some of these simpler but vital, necessary at least, tasks that have to be done. We're not going to be paying them to sit in the shop or something, waiting
No.
for something to do. There's lots to do.
There's lots to do.
But Mark will put them to work, I'm sure.
Madam President, I have a couple more things I forgot.
Okay.
One of the things I forgot to mention with the GIS GeoViewer is that one of the things we discussed that they're looking at, which I think is important to look at, is whether or not if we can do the actual editing and maintenance of the database and provide that back to the vendor. If we can do that in-house, we could potentially save money. So that's something that they're evaluating right now, and I asked for that. And then also I wanted to mention, and I don't want to steal Mark's thunder, and he's going to give us a number, I think, but we're looking at cost savings by doing the work in-house, maybe substantial cost savings. So even though there is a cost increase, there could be a net savings that's pretty large. And I also wanted to speak to the org chart and what came out of the organizational studies recommendations. And you see new positions like contracts procurement person, well, when you think about it, if we're laying all our own pipe, we're going to have a lot of procurement going on. And so I think it's important that people understand that our field crew that's doing that work, and Mark and everybody else, they're going to need support. And the accounting staff's going to need support. And so I just say that for hopefully public benefit, because, you know, it took me a while in looking at this to connect the dots. So I think it's important that folks understand that these positions aren't just so people can take long lunches, or so that the staff can get the work done, and that things don't get held up because we don't have enough support people. Then the only other thing is that this org chart that's in here tonight, if we were approving the budget at the same time, is this a recommendation or proposal, or the way you plan to go in terms of the way the org chart's organized?
Yes.
Okay, because I noticed that it's slightly different than was recommended by the consultant, and the safety person and the development JS coordinator would still stay under the general manager, as opposed to be under the AGM for operations. So
Yeah, that org chart will actually change in July or August.
okay, all right, thanks.
So it's the same number of people, and for the public, you all don't have this in your packet. But one of the things that we keep hearing is there's 47 people in the office and 3 people in the field. So Ann put together a little presentation. This reflects an org chart. If we had hired the production technician for succession management in production, and we hired the contracts procurement person, so there would be actually 20 FTE that's in support of operations, and 10 administrative. So, you know, it's easy to say, well, the development GIS coordinator and the safety person work in the office, so they must be administrative. They're in direct support of our production and distribution and field service tech out in the field. That's the primary emphasis of safety. The office folks work safely, but they don't generally work in 6-foot deep trenches. The contracts procurement person would be 50% of that time, could easily be attributed to operational aspect. The general manager spends over half of his time working on operational stuff. And it just goes on and on and on. So I wanted to show that just as to indicate to the board and the public that if this is all implemented, we are shifting our concept of field and administration from office and field. Right? So I'm just offering this as a response to, well, there's all these people in the office. Well, as I say in one of my previous careers, a lot of the people that are out there doing maintenance work wouldn't be out there doing maintenance work if they weren't getting paid. And you need administrative support, and they're out there doing maintenance work because they got hired. And they're doing it in an orderly fashion because they have supervisors and leaders that are coming up with these annual plans on what's being done. So it's a service-oriented industry. You need people to provide the service, and you need people for accounts payable and accounts receivable and HR and everything else that goes with it. So, union negotiations. So.
Thank you, well said, well said.
And so I wanted to add one more thing too. You know, as we've talked about this a lot, that people will be retiring. And hiring new people is like growing them for us. And that's really important. We're, you know, growing some more staff. So I think that's really important.
Yep, thank you. Any public comment on this? Seeing none, I agree with everything that's been said, and I really look forward to the day when they go out with iPads or something, and we actually have a record of where things are and what was done with them, because right now, everything's on paper, and that is just, in today's world, that is not efficient, and it does not give us the information that we need to keep track of the system. So with that, what am I supposed to do? Where am I?
Oh, I had one more thing, before it goes to public comment, one more thing. Is there anything in here about improvements to the shop?
Yeah, there's $20,000 in there for improvements to the shop. And I
Okay.
think there's
Oh, I see, the shop remodel, okay.
$45,000 placeholder for an office trailer.
Okay.
So we may not necessarily be doing both, but there's placeholders in there to affect that change.
And when you guys redo your lighting system here, I mean, people have to spend all day under these lights. They need to have the most healthy lights possible. So get your equivalent of human grow lights, whatever is the best. You know, they rate them by, you know, kelvins and temperatures and stuff like that, so make sure that people who are under these lights all day have
Okay.
healthy lights.
They'll go from fluorescent to LED, it'll be better.
But there's different, you know, it's the
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
temperature on those, which is
Yeah.
important, so.
Okay, so it's recommended the board receive for information and improve all or a portion of the proposed budget.
And I'm just
What
gonna
is your pleasure?
bet that the board's not ready to approve all because they're gonna
I
wanna
would
look at
absolutely agree with that.
loans. And we'll be covering loans in more detail at Wednesday's Finance Committee and again on June 20th. And
So just,
we'll be sending you some homework.
just accept this for now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a motion to accept it?
I move that we accept the information for the 18-19 budget.
We didn't
Thank
take
you.
public
Do I have
comment.
a second?
I thought she did call on
I'd
it.
asked for
Oh,
public
okay.
comment and nobody.
Nobody?
Sat and looked back at me.
Sheesh.
I did ask this time.
I'll second it.
Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. We'll do a roll call. Director Sloan.
Aye.
Director Hunt.
Aye.
Director
You're not on
Johnson.
the hook yet.
Director Hunger.
Aye.
And I'm an aye.
Put
It
up
is
Mark's
unanimous that we've accepted it.
So y'all move so quickly that before we go on to the next item, I want to take a minute. There's been some discussion about how much does it cost to contract and how much does it cost to do stuff internally. So Mark has put together yet another one of his wonderful spreadsheets. Well, this one doesn't have any color in it, but okay.
But there's neat water drops.
Yeah, I tried to keep it more uniform this time. So before you end up on the screen here, we have 5 different budgetary and engineers' estimates. One of them is actually a project, finalized construction project amount as well there from Desert Water Agency. But, you know, somewhat working down, you can see the first top 2 are engineers' estimates. One's from a third party, the other's from DUDEC, from our CIP. The next one is a construction estimate from Desert Water Agency, a budget estimate on what High Desert Water District, our neighbors to the west, utilize on an annual basis for their CRP crew, and then what we've put together in-house for our pricing as well here for the same type of crew. I think the biggest numbers that are associated with that, you can kind of see how the breakdown, you know, this includes the cost for material and all the construction, and then also the design costs, construction management where that's applicable, and then the equipment costs, whereas they're not incorporated into the contractor's estimate, i.e. more associated with our interests here at the bottom there. Gets all broken down into a cost per linear foot. So if you take a look at that, you can see the top project was an estimate for obviously a very large job. It was for 124,000 lineal feet. And so, obviously, in some of those cases, you're going to get a little bit better pricing because of mobilization and demobilization. You know, you only have to do that once to get in and out of a project, whereas we'll be having annual projects that would be getting bidded out every year if we selected a contractor. So you don't get as good of deals with that. But you can see even at that rate, it's still about $130 a lineal foot to install 8-inch water main. The next 2 there are really close to one another. The actual Desert Water Agency pricing along with our CIP estimate there
getting closer to $150 a lineal foot. And then you can see the high desert water districts, actual installation of about 5117 lineal foot when you count design as well. And then what we're anticipating ours to be as well for a project about the same. And so when you add that up together, you're saving anywhere from about, 2.3 to anywhere from about 1.8 to 2.3 million dollars a year on your projects based on that information. So probably closer, of course, to the upper end of that, especially with the construction boom coming back and things kind of going up right now. So.
Yeah, thank you. I remember
Wow.
when I first came on the board, we were doing the H zone, and I couldn't believe how expensive it was per foot, per linear foot. So doing it in-house makes a lot of sense. All right, any public comment? Seeing none, we will go to our district council. Mr. Ganito.
Yes, Madam Chairman. I'll bring you up to date on the water tax bill. It's not part of the administration's trailer bill. And it's been the subject of a lot of debate even before the legislature gets its arms wrapped around it. Aqua's been very active in lobbying and opposing the water tax bill. They've built a coalition of almost 200 member agencies that are funding their efforts. Water districts and business enterprises that are interested in this issue. There's been a lot of press coverage by the Sacramento Bee taking on Aqua, or not, in Aqua's opinion, portraying their role accurately. I know Tim Quinn has expressed some written concern about the issue in the series of Sacramento Bee newspapers. Tim wants to make it clear that Aqua, even though they oppose the bill, they don't oppose the purpose of the bill. Tim's making it very clear that they think it's a noble endeavor, but the funding source, the tax, if you will, he thinks is the wrong way to go for California water districts, imposing you, adopting a rule for you as a tax collector. He thinks that's the wrong, there's other more viable sources of revenue that he suggests, such as the excess surplus in the administration's budget, and also federal funds that are available. So it's gearing up for a real train crash in late October. That's usually when these trailer bills get attention. It's a tax. It's going to take 2/3 vote, pretty heavy margin to reach by the legislature. But it is, I believe it's being pushed very hard by the governor's administration. We'll see. In all my years of practice, I've never seen Aqua engage so vigorously in opposing the piece of legislation. It's really interesting to me, and I'm sure it's the subject of much attention at Aqua, which I didn't attend this time. I just want to let you know it's alive and well. It's moving forward in the form of a trailer bill. Stay tuned. I think it'd be dangerous to try to guess how it's going to shake out ultimately. There's two strong forces, pro and con. Just want to share that with you.
Thank you. And a lot of what was said at Aqua is that it hinges on local control. And, the old story of the camel gets its nose under the tent, pretty soon the whole camel.
That's a great analogy.
And so people were very concerned about that. And a lot of it is local control. Thank you very much, Gil. General Manager, Mr. Sauer.
Well, the easiest thing to do is not have a tent, then the camel can't get its nose under it.
That's a good idea, too.
All right, so about 3 weeks ago at a board meeting, I reported that one of our utility trailers had been stolen from well 16. And Mark came in all happy on Monday because the sheriff's department has found that trailer, what's left of it, and they've made a couple of arrests. And I wanted to mention that to the YouTubers in the audience, that one, kudos to the sheriff's department. Mark happens to know somebody who works in the sheriff's department, and lo and behold, our pictures were being passed around very aggressively, and they sort of went out of their way. Well, they didn't go out of their way. They incorporated it into their normal routine operations and found the right people to talk to. So I want to thank them, and I want to encourage the public. Kathleen, you'll like this. It just illustrates that if you see something going on at one of our facilities that looks a little funky, call us, and we'll be more than happy to follow up immediately. We're available 24/7. And is that a good job? Okay. All right, so Mark's going to give you a little update on, first of all, more on the trailer, what was on it and what's no longer on it.
Yeah, unfortunately, we had a 500-gallon water reservoir, polyurethane water reservoir on there, and a pump and a generator that were, well worth over $5,000 by themselves. So we've actually started working on another trailer already to replace that one. In fact, the day we put the last fitting on that one, we got a call that this one got found. So, but that's our disinfection trailer for the wells as well. So we have one of those put back into place. And are pending to wait to hear if somebody decides to say something about where our generator ran off to, so, before we buy one of those again.
Thank you.
So that was about an $8,000 theft, and it's about $8,000 to put another trailer back together. We intend to work with the district attorney's office, and I'm sure these people have lots of extra cash. But a year plus, a fellow happened to run into our fence over in the yard, and in the last 2 weeks, we were told by the district attorney's office that he will be made to pay restitution for the cost of replacing that fence. So the district attorney's office is in touch with us on their own volition and keeping us posted. And again, they're not stealing from the water district, they're stealing from the customers, because the customers end up paying for these costs. So, Ms. Rebecca.
Where did the sheriffs find the customer's trailer?
Yeah, we haven't been able to find out exactly where they found it yet, but we do know it was in Joshua Tree still. As far as
Wow.
surprisingly.
It's good that it stayed local.
Yeah.
All right, you want to do well 14?
Sure, as far as an update on well 14, unfortunately, we're still getting some bacteriological presence as far as coliform goes, with well 14 following our rehabilitation. Albeit when it comes to some of the sampling that we take to prove that quality is low right now and continues to remain low over the past several weeks, it's still in there. So we're continuing to flush. Lynch, the contractor that actually did our last rehab, who's completed their work per our plans and specifications for that project, actually wants to come back up free of charge and try another disinfection process on the well that we're going to have them do. Hopefully within the next week or two. So, with any luck, that was kind of our next track. This is one of the last things we wanted to try on it as well, was another disinfection. So with any luck, that might have some good effect on it. So.
Cross your fingers, everybody in the district, everybody on the board, because this has been a long time underway.
We have a contingency plan, I'm assuming, at this junction, or several?
Yeah, I mean, the two big ones being that we either move to a 4-log treatment that we can pretty much complete in-house for the most part, to the tune of about $250,000. And then we'll also, we could also start looking for another well. The issue being, we can put the 4-log treatment in, but of course, chromium-6 is going to bear its head one day again as well. And, we're putting money into a well that could potentially require more treatment down the road or things, so it's something to weigh out.
This may be a bad question, that just shows my lack of knowledge here, but a longevity on a well, is there a lifespan on a well?
Yeah, it's given that to us, absolutely. I mean, out here in the desert, it's not uncommon to get, anywhere from 30 to 50 years out of a well for having issues. I've seen them as early as 25 years, start having sanding problems and things like that, so the fact that this one's, well over 30 years old, it's definitely given us its life.
So they're not forever?
Right.
Wow, we want to be having that discussion.
Thank you very much.
The big one.
Anything Yes, sir?
I'm not done yet.
Yes, sir.
So I want to bring to the attention of the board that July 4th board meeting is on July 4th, which is a holiday. So I don't know what you want to do, but you might want to let us know if we're going to have one meeting or we're going to move the July 4th meeting, which is on July 4th, to the next week or whatever.
We have another meeting before then, so we can decide at the next meeting?
Yeah, June 20th is our
June
next
20th,
meeting.
yeah.
In whatever July meeting we have, we intend to bring the organizational assessment and implementation plan to you. As I mentioned, there's 2 proposals that we've received on the strategic plan for about $30,000. The solar feasibility draft study has been reviewed and approved by the California Energy Commission, and we have permission to share that with our technical advisory committee, which is made up of 7 locals. And we intend to meet the week of July 9th on that with the engineer that did the feasibility study. And the CEC person from the state is going to ask for permission to come down here, permission to travel. They have very limited travel authorization. So she's going to try and be down here for that. Yesterday, I believe it was, it might have been the day before, Beverly received her notice that she is now a certified notary.
Yay!
And on the June 20th meeting, we'll be bringing the local hazard mitigation plan to the board. It's not the final plan, it's got to go to OES, Office of Emergency Services, and to FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency. But the board has to tentatively accept the draft plan, and then Gary Sturdivant will take care of that. And next week sometime, Mark, Keith, and I are going to join Brian Hammer of the Mojave Water Agency, who is their GIS guru, and maybe Christy Huner, another GIS person. Brian teaches Esri classes, and he is also familiar with GeoViewer, and he is very aware of GeoViewer because Hesperia uses it, as does Phelan Pinion Hills. Yeah. So he's going to arrange for us to talk with Eric Green of Hesperia, who also teaches Esri GIS classes. So we've got the Esri teachers that are familiar with GeoViewer, and we're going to go and have a conversation with them. And I think that's it for the general manager's report.
Very good. I think with all the little shaking on the San Andreas, that doing the hazard mitigation plan in a timely manner is very important. All right.
We don't have volcanoes in there, but okay.
Well, we do, but they're pretty much.
Let's hope
Public
so.
outreach. Ms. Radnich, who's one of the most busy people you'll ever meet.
Good evening. Farmers Market this month. Last month was pretty busy with our little tortoises, and I thought, we're going to take a break this month. No. We had staff put together a brand-new mock-up meter, and it comes to our attention that a lot of people don't understand, number one, how to read a meter, number two, the fact that they can actually lock it up when they go on vacation. They thought that interfered with us reading their meter. But it doesn't. So we have been demonstrating at the market, and we're getting a lot of foot traffic and interest on this, which was really surprising, but even some of the people at the market who have booths are coming over and asking more about their meter. So I'm glad we're there. And also, we're covering the fact that, you know, if you lock off or lock up your meter when you go on vacation, the chance of theft gets interfered with that way. So they have discussions with us about that because that's kind of escaping their awareness that that even happens. So it's kind of been a very interactive, it was only our first weekend, but very interactive topic. Wildcrafting classes in your newsletter this month, you'll see the dates. They are all listed for the end of this month. However, we've had to add an additional session B for Monday, June 25th, which is not listed. only because we can only take so many people out in the field at a time. The first class, Session A, is a prerequisite to Session B, and Session A, we can pack the room. But going out in the field, we have to have small classes. So we've added one more for June 25th. So far, we have 17 registrations. I think we're going to have quite a group learning about wildcrafting to cut back on water use. We are scheduling, it appears, for our district tours in September, as well as I have scheduled September 18th, Tuesday afternoon from 1 to 4 p.m. We will have a landscape irrigation tune-up class from the Mojave Conservation Desert Resource, something. They're coming out to do it for us. And the guy's really cool, and it'll be about a 3-hour session, and we'll be doing that here. Lastly, I completed the Water Education Festival event at La Quintana Middle School. We ran about 400 8th graders in a day. That was 10 sessions of a half-hour teachings rotated. It was wonderful. However, they loved what we were teaching on, because I had baby tortoises there, and we taught about the importance, especially with the heat, of proper hydration, and how animals instinctively do it correctly, and we as humans living in the desert have to learn. So it was a great topic, very applicable, and we were one of the favored displays. That's my report. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And in her spare time, she had 1,000 people come to the opening of the High Desert Cultural Center, which is awesome. Anyone who has not been there, it is really worth seeing.
Thank you.
Yes. I can't believe all you do. Okay, Finance Committee, Vice President Johnson, Director Flowen. We'll leave it to leave it to the prez.
Oh, another exciting meeting. Tom and I plugged through for, Kurt said it was only an hour and a half, I think it was 3, but it was a...
It was long.
It was a long meeting.
2 hours and 4 minutes.
But I want to encourage everybody, we're diligently trying to go through the budget, we're looking at the expenditures, and we're seriously, looking at every expenditure that we have in the district, and if there's opportunity for you to come, please, you'll be amazed. And we're diligently working at the budget, so I just want to thank Tom for his patience with us. And thank those that attended. It's always stimulating, and the word is riveting. So please come. Our next meeting is June 13th, and I'll just do my comments right now, too, real quick. Thanks to the first responders, men and women in uniform. Thanks for bringing the Sheriff's Department out and getting some help. That's always good to hear from our guys. So, and thank the staff for all the hard work.
Yes. Okay, we'll move to the Mojave Water Agency Board of Directors. Director Flowen.
It was very interesting for me in that what I was, in the first place, they're doing their budget now, and the numbers are really big compared to ours. I mean, we're pretty heartfelt in our concerns over the expense of rebuilding this place and all of that, but their numbers are a whole lot bigger, and they have, over there, they have infrastructure issues too. One of the things that really caught my attention and was helpful was how far ahead they plan for things. They have to plan 60 years into the future, as does the state, on what we're going to do to safely deliver water to a really big place. And the thing that I used that extended time on was our borrowing. I had early on, and I put it out there, I'd focused on Mark's estimate that a tractor would last for, say, the equipment generally, tractors, et cetera, would last for, on average, around 10 years or so. And at the time, we were talking about a 40-year loan, and one would not buy a car that way, where the car dies in 5 or 10 years and you're paying on it for 40 years while you're still buying other cars. But when money is borrowed and you pay the loan back over a lengthy period of time, that means that the people that are living here in the future that may not even be born yet will be paying their share of the loan for what we are having to do right now, if you follow me on that. And I kind of picked up some of that stuff just by listening to what's going on in MWA. So it was helpful, because I could have been a stick in the mud on some of this borrowing stuff, but I'm not anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anything else before we move to item 12, future meetings, future director meetings and training opportunities? The first one is the Mojave Water Agency Technical Advisory Committee is tomorrow, and I cover that. Finance Committee, Bob talked about, it is June 13th at 9 o'clock. They get an hour and a half because they have a lot to talk about. And we're following it with the water operations, which is a really cool committee. You've got to come to that. Mark tells us all about what they're doing. And then the Mojave Board of Directors, June 14th, is Director Hunt at 9:30 in the morning. All right, with that, is there anything else for the good of the order before I go to closed session?
Oh, I just wanted to say I went to the Memorial Day services at the Memorial Park, and it looks really good. They did the cash for grass, and they've done really nice desert landscaping, and it's really quite an attractive job that they've done.
I'm gonna have to look at it because my landscaping is one of the things. Johnson, anything you want to add? I just forgot to go in the office. Director Hunt?
I just wanted to quickly say I'm very excited about the report that we got back for the energy grant, if you will. And it's really exciting to hear that some CEC staffer actually wants to come down and participate. And, you know, we envisioned the grant to study the feasibility of taking the district solar, but it turned out that they did a complete energy audit for the district. And Kurt pointed out to me from the preliminary report that there are a number of potential cost savings in the district. One of them was included as a proposed budget item tonight, and that's taking our existing lighting from fluorescent to LED, which will have a really quick payback period of 3-point-something years. And we're looking at, you know, the possibility of purchasing these, what do they call them, smart pumps for the wells, or?
Premium efficient motors?
Oh, yeah, more efficient motors, right. So, you know, there could be savings all the way around in the end. So it's a really exciting possibility for us.
Thank you. Anything you want to add that I didn't ask you about before?
No, ma'am, I'm good.
Okay, so we're good. At this time, we're going to go into closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1, Public Employee Performance Evaluation of the General Manager, and pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, consult with the board's designated representative, the Ad Hoc Negotiation Committee, which is Vice President Johnson and Director Unger, with regard to potential compensation adjustments, increases to the general manager. So we will come back to open session for a report. I doubt there'll be anything that's going to be of interest, so I'm sure most of you will wish to go home. So with that, we are